Got it. Big. Marker.
From dynamic action-packed blockbusters to heartwarming science fiction films, from fantastical escapist movies to somber historical dramas, critically acclaimed director Steven Spielberg has long dazzled the silver screen with enrapturing films and has established himself as a household name. Being the top-grossing director of all time, Steven Spielberg is undoubtedly one of the most prolific directors in Hollywood's history. But who exactly is the man behind some of the greatest films, and what is it about his films that seem to transverse time and age to speak to audiences young and old even to this day? Well, to answer that, we must first know the man, and to know the man, first we must know the boy. For as Spielberg himself has said, hardly a single one of his films isn't based on something that happened in his childhood. Born on December 18, 1946 in Cincinnati, Ohio, Steven Spielberg was fascinated by theater and film from a young age, and would often film family events, camping trips, and then subsequently narrative movies on his father's 8mm movie camera. Born into an Orthodox Jewish family just a little over a year after World War II had ended, young Steven grew up listening to stories of Hitler and the Holocaust from relatives who had survived the Holocaust and German Jewish immigrants who attended his grandmother's home-based English classes, even witnessed tattoos on survivors' arms. But it wasn't until much later when he married Kate Capshaw, who converted to Judaism, that he would come to embrace his Jewish heritage and come to direct the deeply harrowing Schindler's List. Oh no, as he would later recall in a New York Times article in 1993, young Steven was embarrassed and self-conscious about his Jewishness. Having suffered 2 bloody noses in high school due to anti-Semitism, it was no wonder that Steven felt alienated and wanted nothing more than to fit in. But perhaps more monumental an impact on his life than any other person was his father, Arnold Spielberg. An American electrical engineer, Arnold infused into his son his love for science fiction and war stories, both of which would become genres Steven would go on to reinvent. His parents' divorce was a blow to Steven, and he largely blamed his father for it. This estrangement from his father would later manifest itself as the absent father, the villain, in many of Steven's films until his reconciliation with him. Film for Steven was a way for him to make life better for himself, and he was hooked. During one summer vacation, he hid in the bathroom of Universal Studios until everyone else had left, and spent the rest of the day exploring the lot, where he was given a 3-day pass by the librarian impressed by his ambition. And ambitious he was. At the age of 22, his first short film, Amblin, got him offered a 7-year term contract to direct television at Universal, and also made him the youngest director signed for a long-term deal with a major Hollywood studio. And that was only the start. Steven Spielberg started his career directing television and film in the early 1970s, during a time when Hollywood was trying to rise from the ashes of its recession in the late 1960s, a period of time which saw cinema attendances in America plummet to an all-time low, and where ailing Hollywood studios such as Paramount Pictures, MGM, and Universal were being swallowed up by wealthy conglomerates. Disillusioned by the Vietnam War and disenchanted by the government, audiences were hungry for something different, and studios had little idea what would sell. Enter the movie brats, a diverse batch of young directors in their late 20s and early 30s who rose to prominence, which marked a film movement in the mid-1960s to early 1980s called the New Hollywood Era. And leading the charge was Spielberg, who put an end to that streak with his breakthrough film Jaws in 1975, raking in a massive $470 million in global returns. Steven went on to rework and reimagine some of Hollywood's classic genres, such as science fiction with E.T., AI, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, monster movies with Jurassic Park and Jaws, and swashbuckling action genre with Indiana Jones, all of which had unprecedented success in the box office and became immediate classics, which not only redefined the blockbuster genre, but which also paved the way for other big-budget films and special effects. Films from the 1970s were morally ambiguous, risk, and anti-establishment enabled by the end of the production code, and with more naturalist filmmaking practices in between those of classical Hollywood and European and Asian art cinema. Take Jaws, for example. It manages to balance the thrill that makes a blockbuster and anti-establishment themes of the New Hollywood era with its skeptical attitude toward political leadership. E.T. too contains elements of distrust of the government in the midst of its childlike wonder and awe, with its portrayal of the government scientists being the bad guys of the film. With such commercial hits, Spielberg was key in the resurgence of the 1970s and rose to fame as a major director-producer where he now, as he likes to put it, dreams for a living. And indeed he does. Wide eyes glistening with wonder, bicycles flying off into the night, rolling boulders threatening to crush, ripples in the water, a girl in a red coat. Steven Spielberg has managed to create some of the most iconic visuals in contemporary history. Employing masterfully cinematography, lighting, and music to burn captivating moments into the hearts and minds of his audience, there are certain traits that have become associated with the director. Firstly, and perhaps most famously, we have the shot named after the man himself, the Spielberg face. eyes wide open, staring in stupefaction in a moment too wondrous for words as the camera zooms into the character's face. Spielberg has used this technique across genres to convey various emotions: sudden shock, gripping fear, horror, remembrance of a traumatic past, or dread of the future. Moments of revelation and most commonly childlike awe. Used masterfully to manipulate our emotions to mirror that of the character, Spielberg's signature stroke reminds the audience of his character's humanity and keeps the focus on the effects of the situation on his characters rather than the situation itself, and most importantly serves to convey his central theme of childlike wonder as the audience watches in helpless surrender together with the characters. Secondly, we have his long takes. Unlike others, Spielberg's long takes are less stylized and tend not to draw attention to themselves. They are cleverly hidden by following movement and emotion. He uses this to draw us into somber emotional moments, plunge us into dramatic action, and even introduce characters in captivating ways. We are immersed into the dramatic energy of the scene. Forgetting the presence of the camera, we are pulled into their world and emotions. Thirdly, reflection shots. From mirrors to glass and even a horse's glistening eye, Steven Spielberg is known for his reflection shots, showing both the character and what they see at the same time. This allows the audience to examine the details of a scene without losing connection to the character, and on a deeper level, takes his character's metaphorical self-reflection to a literal one. In some instances, he even uses this to draw a similarity between two characters. In this moving scene at the end of Schindler's List, after a tearful goodbye, Schindler leaves in his car. As the camera tracks alongside, looking through the glass window at Schindler looking out, focus deliberately shifts to the reflection of the rows of Jews back to Schindler and then back to the Jews. Here, there is a one-lyric ambience which drives home the message that these Jews survived the Holocaust thanks to Schindler, and he is blended visually with those he has saved. Fourthly, glowing lights. Through windows, doorframes, and alien spaceships, Spielberg uses filters and smoke in virtually every film to create a soft, hazy, almost dreamlike appearance that would become the most distinctive style of the 1970s American cinema. Spielberg uses this to create a sense of mystery, otherworldliness, and wonder, all apt in genres like science fiction and used effectively to highlight his central themes. Last, but certainly not least, we have John Williams' music scores. Having worked together on 28 movies over 46 years, Williams has scored all of Spielberg's films except for 3. He has become synonymous with Spielberg, and his scores have become icons of their own. Just listen and see how many films immediately pop into your head from just a few notes. Jurassic Park, E.T., Indiana Jones, and perhaps most recognized, two low notes played alternately on a tuba, now synonymous for sharks and any form of aquatic danger. That's right, Jaws. Aptly put by Spielberg during his friend's bestowal of the 2016 Life Achievement Award.
John, you breathe belief into every film we have made.
Indeed, his scores truly do elevate a film to new heights. But of course, all these devices work for a singular purpose, and that is to aid in the telling of the story and its themes. Themes like parent-child tension, or more specifically, missing fathers and adult children, are prevalent in most of Spielberg's films. Even within his action-packed blockbusters, his characters are often victims of absent fathers, like Indiana Jones with his father who cared more about his work than his own son, or the children of Jurassic Park having divorced parents. Arguably the most autobiographical aspect of Spielberg's films, the theme is perhaps most notably displayed in E.T., a film that Spielberg himself noted was a reflection of how he felt growing up as a child. Elliot's parents are divorced, his father is off in Mexico with another woman, his mother is less of an authoritarian figure than an oblivious one. He is alone with no real friends. Elliot is lost, no less than E.T., and that is the bonding of E.T. and Elliot, the alien and the alienated. Elliot is left to maneuver the overwhelming emotions of childhood by himself and is forced to
grow up. Think how other people feel for a change.
With the arrival of E.T., he even goes as far as to take on an almost parental role to E.T. as he teaches his friend his first English words or brings him out for Halloween dressed as a ghost. He even remarks to E.T.,
"You could be happy here. I could take care of you. I wouldn't let anybody hurt you. We could grow up together, E.T."
Another recurrent theme is wonder and fear. Although often cited as a peddler of fluffy childlike fantasy and optimism, fear is the often overlooked driving force behind his films. Being yet again another element taken from his childhood, Spielberg was a boy who was scared of many things but also simultaneously drawn to them. Airplanes, the huge tree outside his bedroom window, he would even wake up from nightmares happy to be awake but then wanting to go back to sleep to have that same nightmare again. This entwinement of wonder and fear manifests itself in Spielberg's films, usually in relation to bigness. Showing us a wondrous world from the eyes of a child, he also shows us the resulting fear thereof. Towering trees in the woods, a giant glowing spaceship, Life-size dinosaurs, a literal giant out the window, all make us feel small, childlike, and inspire a sense of awe, but not without an undercurrent of fear. For although bicycles do lift off into the moonlit sky accompanied by John Williams' otherworldly score, it also begins in darkness with rattling keys on the belts of faceless adults and chilling screams. And although dinosaurs loom majestically in the distance, they also devour helpless men on the toilet. Although the glorious light emanating from the ark flows spellbindingly through the air, it also strikes the hearts of men and melts the flesh of their bones. Both beautiful and fearsome, wonder and fear go hand in hand for the director, all tools in the belt of a master storyteller, and that he most certainly is. However, having developed into the epitome of mainstream Hollywood movies, Spielberg has had his fair share of critics, accusing his childlike wonderments of being nothing but childish fairy tales, and his blockbusters nothing but commercial junk food to please mass audiences devoid of artistry. But just taking a look at Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan, both poignant historical dramas, should suffice to silence those claims. And if you're still not convinced, I'll just let his grand total of 204 award nominations and 192 wins, constituting 131 Academy Award nominations and 34 wins, 110 BAFTA Award nominations and 22 wins, 66 Golden Globe nominations and 11 wins, not to mention the 1995 American Film Institute Life Achievement Award and Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2015 speak for themselves. Whew! So love him or hate him, you cannot deny, Steven Spielberg has been able to merge deep artistic themes with his apt sense of what the audiences want to deliver consistent quality films that have shaped Hollywood as we know it and have pulled us into the heart of his imagination. So dream on, sir, dream on.